It's my privilege to get to introduce Dr. Philip Zimbardo to you. Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carrie Forden. I'm a faculty member in the psychology unit here. And we're very pleased that Dr. Zimbardo was able to join us as our distinguished visiting scholar. He really doesn't need an introduction, but I'll do a very brief one. As you all know, he's an internationally recognized, because he's recognized here in Egypt, scholar, educator, researcher, and media personality. How many of you have seen one of his TED Talks? I thought so, yes. He's won numerous awards for all of those things. He's a professor emeritus at Stanford University and Palo Alto University in California. And he's also taught at the Naval Postgraduate School, Yale, New York University, and Columbia. As you all probably know, today he's going to be telling us about his recent research on the secret power of time, how to influence our decisions, and impact national destinies. Dr. Zimbardo.
It is a great honor for me to be here with you. I spoke yesterday at the old university. It's wonderful to be with you at the new University of Cairo. I'm going to share some ideas with you from my heart and my mind about research I've been doing for many years, but it's only recently that this research has begun to have a global impact. And later we have research teams all over the world, and hopefully we'll soon have research teams in Egypt at the University of Cairo. Before I begin, though, I realized yesterday I gave a lecture on psychology of evil and heroism, which is two other things I have been studying and studying now. And one of the students here reminded me that I had failed to complete a mission. I grew up in poverty in the ghetto in New York City. Our family was on home relief. No one in my family ever even went to high school. So I was the first one to go to high school, then college, graduate school, and then become internationally famous. And I was going to mention how I did it, and I forgot. So again, who was the student who reminded me just before? Thank you so much. Tell me your name again. Sarah. Sarah reminded me, that means she was listening really carefully. So the secret is, okay, I'm going to hold it. The secret of success are two things. The only way you get out of poverty is with education, if it is available to you. And secondly, and this is going to be part of the talk, is by developing a future time perspective. People who are poor live in the present. And we're going to see either present hedonism, meaning you just want to have fun, consume things, get addicted to things, or present fatalism. You believe nothing you do makes a difference, so you give up. And so the key to success, the key to your success, is developing a future time perspective where you set goals, objectives. And that's what the talk is going to be about today, because the temptation is always to play and have fun and not to work. And so many of your friends from high school who are not here, they went that other way. They played when you worked. They had fun when you worked harder. And the ideal is, you'll see, I'm going to talk about developing a balanced time perspective where you blend being future-oriented and selected present hedonism. So I mentioned yesterday that in my classes, and this is a typical class I teach at Stanford, 300 students and bigger, I always begin with music. Music relaxes me, it relaxes the class, and the music is always a theme related to the lecture. So if the sound works, okay, while we're trying to get the technology to work, so the big paradox in life is the thing that influences you most, all of your decisions, all of your actions, all of your judgments, is something that's inside of you that you're unaware of. So we call it the time paradox, and that's a book I wrote, The Time Paradox. And you should go online, thetimeparadox.com. And also I'm going to talk about a scale I developed that you could take my scale and see what your time zones are. The key to life is understanding your time perspective and the time perspective of people around you. Because it's central to understanding human nature. I'm going to argue that time perspective is more important to understand than your personality, because it is the direct influence on virtually every decision you make. In addition, when many people in a nation, in a culture, have a similar time perspective, it influences really national destiny. So in some countries, for example, when I give a lecture in Mexico, and the lecture is supposed to begin at 2 o'clock, no one is in the room. Even I'm lecturing to psychiatrists and clinical psychologists because lunch is 12 to 2. Well, 12 to 2-ish. So at 2 o'clock, no one is in the room. At 2:15, some people come in. Hola, how are you? 2:30, some more come in. People are coming in at 4 o'clock when the lecture is over. And they say, we're sorry you missed your talk. We had a very good lunch. In America, it's exactly the opposite. In Germany, the opposite. People value punctuality. To be late is to be an insult to the teacher, to the speaker. So again, it's important to understand the time perspective, not only of individuals, but of different nations. And so this is what I've been studying, again, for a long time. To go back to my original story, growing up poor meant my father especially lived in an expanded present. We were very poor. He never worked. He didn't like to work. He was the first boy after having 7 sisters. That means he was a prince. They took care of him. He didn't have to work. He didn't have to do it. And so when he got to be a man, he was still like the boy. And so he never liked to work. He lived in an expanded present time perspective. And so he loved to go to parties. He could play every musical instrument. He loved to dance, party, have fun. It's a problem when you have 4 children, okay? And you don't have a job and you're poor. But he never worried. He was always complacent. He was always happy with the little bit that he had. But of course, my mother was not happy being poor, and the children were not happy being poor. So again, here's a case where, for me, I developed opposition against my father. I loved him, but I knew what his time perspective was wrong. Certainly wrong for me, wrong for the family. And I would try to get to change him, but I didn't know how. The amazing thing is that he never went to high school, and the family career was to be a barber. His grandfather, his father, he did. But he didn't like to wait on people. He liked people to wait on him. So he quit being a barber. And he learned electronics by going to a radio store and asking the person to teach him how to do soldering, how to read a wiring diagram. The amazing thing, this man who had no education, in 1947, built a television set from a diagram that actually worked. We got children to come. My friends came and paid 25 cents to watch the World Series in 1947. Television was invented in 1946. And so I told my father, Dad, we can make another one. Everybody wants to buy one. He said, no, I did one. It was a challenge. That's over. So I could never convince him to be future-oriented, to set goals. And so in that case, I failed. But I said, well, at least I will do this. And again, for me, the critical thing was having teachers who would say, okay, don't play with the bad boys. This weekend, I know there's going to be parties and things. Yeah, you should study. Monday, you have to be ready with your project or something of this kind. And so this is the important thing, that teachers modeling love for students, one, but also modeling the importance of setting goals for yourself, setting objectives, and then also, how do you get from here to that goal? How do you set sub-goals? How do you give yourself checklists that you check off? And the argument is then you reward yourself every time you succeed in doing something, that you say, okay, now I'm going to give myself a reward. I'm going to watch a good movie on YouTube. I'm going to go to a cafe with my friends. But after I succeed with achieving this goal, not before. we did research even at Stanford University. It's very hard to get in, very competitive now. Most difficult university in the world, meaning 30,000 students apply from the whole world, and they only take 1,500. That means most of the students are rejected. Students have only A's. Students who win all kind of honors, but there's so many who apply that many of the good students get rejected. So most of the students are very focused, organized, but still, there are some students who are very, very smart who still live in the present. What they learn is never to take classes have term papers. Always to take seminars where you could simply argue brilliantly. And when we give them our scale, it turns out that they are totally different than students sitting next to them who are future-oriented. When we say, there's an exam on Monday, when do you begin to study? If you're future-oriented, you start Friday. If you're present-oriented, you start Sunday night. Or suppose somebody invites you to a party Sunday night, you go to the party. That means on Monday you're not ready for the exam. So you say, I'm sick. You lie. You don't come in. You get a doctor's note, I fell on the way to the lecture. So you live your whole life always making excuses, which again it's going to be a problem when you get a job. Can we do it? We think it's a very complicated technology.
30 seconds, studio. Keep it quiet, please. Settle down.
Can we lower that?
It's about time. End sequence. Take one. 15 seconds, studio. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
So again, so the time paradox, as I said, I'll just repeat, is that I want to argue that time perspective is the most central aspect of human nature that we have ignored. We meaning psychologists, we as individuals. And once you understand the kinds of things I'm saying today, you're going to make wiser decisions in your life. And so the question is, how do you become aware of the psychology of your time perspective? So it's the study of, so what is time perspective? At every moment we have experiences. Experiences flow through us, our consciousness. So, but time perspective is how we put them into time zones or partitions. Right now is the present. When I was talking before about the technology not working, that's the past. What you're thinking about doing after the lecture, what you're planning about doing tonight, going on a date on the weekend, that is the future. But within those categories, we can look at in a more refined way. So these time frames vary between individuals, as I mentioned earlier, they vary between cultures, and they become biased. So the big three are past, present, and future. But many of us get rewarded, as my father, for living in the present. Some of us get rewarded for living in the past. There are many cultures that live in the past. Some cultures live in a positive past. I'll mention my family is Sicilian. Like my grandmother, grandfather both emigrated from Sicily. And they live in a positive past. They remember all the good old times. And they live in a present hedonistic present. They love family, they love food, they love making babies. And so they live, but they have no future. So we can look at cultures. Now, again, the sad thing about Eastern European cultures that were crushed by communism, first the Nazis and communism, many of the older people live in a negative past. They remember all the terrible things that they had to endure, all the suffering, all the sacrifices they made. And the problem is they keep those negative things in the present, rather than saying that was then and this is now. So it's the foundation of many things. You cannot have achievement motives without being future-oriented. You cannot have the concept of causal thinking without being future-oriented. The problem with living in the present is a digital world. It is or is not. You say, you want to come with me? Yes or no. It's not maybe. In the future, everything is probable. It's never certain. Things like guilt. To feel guilt, you have to have a sense of the past. To improvise, you have to have a good sense of the present. So almost any concept you think about can be anchored to one of the time zones. So here's the model I'm going to use. You have to make a decision of any kind. For students, it's work or play. But it could be you have diabetes, and somebody serves you delicious, sugary banana split. Should you eat it or not? I have gluten allergy. It means I have allergy to flour, to wheat. And somebody serves me beautiful pizza or anything, any delicious dessert. I decide, should I take a little bit? Once I take a little bit, should I take a little more? Because now it's good, but in the future it's going to affect me. So all of our decisions are about, should I do it or should I not? For some people, it's all about the immediate situation. That is, they focus only on what does it look like, what does it smell like, and especially what are other people doing and telling you to do. Those people we're going to call present-oriented. That is, the decisions ignore the past and ignore the future. Other people, your friends, in the same situation, ignore the present. Doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter what other people are doing. They say, when was I in this situation before? What did I do? What were the outcomes? If it was good, I'll do it. If it was bad, I won't do it. We're going to call them past-oriented. For others, ignore the past, ignore the present. It's all about, if I do this, what are the consequences? What are the risks? What are the gains? I do a cost-benefit analysis. I weigh the gains against the risk. Gains are good, I do. Risks are higher, I don't do. We're going to call those people future-oriented. Now, the past and future don't exist. They're abstract. In our mind, they are a mental construction. So even though they're abstractions, we'll see they come to dominate the life of some people. And again, while I'm saying this, on and on you're thinking, where do you fit in this model? So there are 6 time perspective factors we have found over many years of research. 2 focus on the past, 2 on the present, and 2 on the future. Past time perspective, you focus on positive. Your 16-year-old birthday, all the good times, all the good grades you got, all the good friends you had. For other people, they focus on the bad, regret, failure, abuse. There are 2 ways to be present. We said present hedonism. You seek novelty, you seek pleasure, or you avoid pain. All of us as children grew up as present hedonists, little beasts, all on pleasure and avoid pain. For others, it's not that. As I said, it's fatalism. If you grow up in poverty, you're present fatalistic. Your parents are. Nothing you do really makes a difference. As I said, people who grew up under communism developed, and many of them still have this present fatalism. Now, there's 2 ways to be future-oriented. One is the key way. You set goals throughout your life. Depending on your religion, for many people, life begins after the death of your mortal body. When your body dies, you're going to go to heaven, and that's when heaven or whatever your view of life is. And at that point, you want to live your life on earth so that when you die, you will send to your view of heaven or afterlife. I should also mention that the present fatalism, in some religions, your life is fated by Allah. That what you do is simply an effect of what you think you're doing. You're simply living out a life plan. So geography influences time perspective. Climate influences time perspective. Religion, social class, educational level. If you grow up in political, economic instability, you're much more likely to be present-oriented than future-oriented. Your family models, your friends model one of these time perspectives or another, as we'll see. And we'll develop each of these more fully. So Protestant religion around the world, Protestant people around the world tend to be much more future-oriented. Because Calvin, the religious leader Calvin started Calvinism, said that your success on earth is a sign from God that you will be successful in getting into heaven. What it means. So work hard so you be successful here. That will show you, prove to you and everybody else that you're going to go to heaven. So it encouraged what's called a Protestant ethic. To work hard, to sacrifice, while you're on earth, so as a sign that you will be going to heaven. And we'll see later that this has a very profound effect, that in terms of economics, Protestant nations are always typically much more economically successful than Catholic nations, or more successful than Muslim nations. So time is money. This is an advertisement on a stockbroker's window in San Francisco. And the interesting thing, it turns out that Einstein discovers the formula. Yes, time is money. Here's his formula. And curiously, we have just done research that shows Einstein was right. We just finished a major cross-cultural study of 6 different nations. Mexico, Hong Kong, United States, Germany, Brazil, and Italy. And in each of those nations, we gave 600 people our time perspective scale, and then a scale that measures financial literacy, how much you know about investment. Do you know how to figure up different formulas, basic formulas for credit card. And then we gave a measure of financial health. You know, what is your debt? What is your credit card overload? Have you been foreclosed? And we were able to show that time perspective is more important than financial literacy. Knowing your time perspective, we're able to predict whether you have financial health or not. So for example, in any nation, if you are present hedonistic, you are financially sick, which means your credit card is overused, overtaxed. You have a big debt in the bank. You typically have a house foreclosed. And by nations, it turns out, in Brazil, 75% of all Brazilian population use credit cards daily. 70% of them are at the maximum. That means they will never pay. They will never pay off the interest on those credit cards. In Germany, nobody uses credit cards. They say it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have a credit card. You just borrow the money you need for each thing you want. So we can see nations and individuals that their time perspective influences how they make investments, how they deal with credit, and whether they even care about whether being making good investments and bad investments. And so I did this with 2 former students, and these 2 students used to work in England in Chase Bank, and they used to work without knowing about time perspective. They used to make up ads, how to get people to make bad investments, get a credit card with no payment for 3 months, and then 20% or something. And so they would say these would be the indulgent hedonists. That's a phrase they used. And then they felt guilty. For 10 years they cheated people, and now they started a new company called Magnify Money. So you go online, www.magnifymoney.com, and they're using this information to help people make wise investments, smart investments. So the scale I developed is 56 items. It's called the Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory, ZTPI. And we have a shorter version now, 15 items. I believe we have an Egyptian version. I will find out for you. If not, one of you should develop it. But if you go online, thetimeparadox.com, you have the scale, you take the scale, and it immediately gives you your score on all those dimensions, and it gives you what we think is an ideal. Not only should you do it, you should give it to your family and friends. It's also a great thing to use for meeting people, talking. What's your time perspective? People used to say, you know, what is your sign, your astrological sign? This is much better, especially with psychologists. Now, I will mention in a minute, we also did a recent cross-cultural study, 24 different nations. I don't remember offhand if Egypt is one of them, where we discover of those 56 items, there are 36 items that are universal. That's astounding. Here's a scale made in America, made mostly for understanding my students, that around the world, there are 36 items that are the same, invariant. That means they can be used in any country, in any study, with those 36 items, and you can predict similar outcomes. And everybody using my scale, everyone throughout the world is getting significant results. And I'm going to show you some on health, on well-being, on education, on studying, on success. So let's quickly look at what this means from the point of view of psychology. As you know, when you give a scale, you want to know what does it correlate with? What does it predict? So correlations go from 0, meaning no relationship, to +1, meaning if I know the score on this scale, I can predict the score on that scale. To -1, the score on this scale predicts the opposite. Most correlations in personality psychology are on the order of 0.2 or 0.3. That means they predict, but very weakly. They predict significantly only if you have a very large sample. I'm going to show you results contrasting our scale with many, many different other measures and scales. And our correlations are enormous. Most correlations in personality psychology are on the order of 0.2 or 0.3. That means they predict, but very weakly. They predict significantly only if you have a very large sample. I'm going to show you results contrasting our scale with many, many different other measures and scales. And our correlations are enormous. The phrase is robust. So, for example, when we look at future time perspective, and we compare it to many other measures, what we discover is that people who are high on future, the correlation with being conscientious is 0.7. That's enormous. There are no correlations in anything in psychology more than 0.7, 0.75. Also, people who are high on future have a high preference for consistency. They want things to be consistent, predictable. They have high ego control. They have a lot of energy. They're able to control the impulse. What are they opposite on? They don't seek sensation. They're not aggressive, and they're not depressed. This was on a sample of 205 students in California. These are older students in like a community college. So to be future-oriented means that you're conscientious. When you say something, you'll follow through, you'll do it. You want things to be consistent in your life. What difference does that make? Why is it so important to be consistent or conscientious? So on the scale, it's I'm able to resist temptation, but I know there's work to be done. So if you're future-oriented, it's really about, life is filled with work. What it means to be a child is you play. But at some point they say you got to stop being a child. You got to do schoolwork or homework. So work replaces. But once you're successful at work, then work becomes fun. Work becomes play because you have a sense of mastery. I can do it. But the key is you're able to resist temptations. And we'll talk later. Temptations are always there. So the reason conscientiousness is important is recent studies show from 20 different studies with 9,000 people from 6 different nations. So this is a result you can believe in. It says that, and they all use different measures of conscientiousness. Conscientious people live at least 2 years longer than others. This is the only study in psychology that relates a psychological variable to mortality. If you're conscientious, you live longer. Who would want to live 2 years longer? But in order to do that, it's not simply I become future-oriented. We now know from a lot of our research, future-oriented people do what? They get health checkups, they get dental checkups, they get medical checkups. Women get pap smears, breast mammograms. They eat health foods, they don't eat junk food, they don't eat sugar, they don't eat salt, and they exercise. In addition, they don't take risks. Risk driving their car, risk driving a motorcycle, and I'll present some of that data. So if you live a life where you minimize risk and you maximize healthy behavior, you're going to live longer. So it's not a secret way, So it's to be future-oriented, you automatically do those things, you become more conscientious, and the goal is not you're going to simply live a better life, you're going to live 2 years longer. To be past positive means you live a nice life. You enjoy family, friends, your identity, good old times, you're happy, you have good self-esteem, you're friendly, a little bit of energy, you're not anxious, you're not depressed, you're not aggressive. So this is a nice thing to be past positive. If you've had a good life in the past. For some people, sadly, they have not. Now, the most interesting group, especially among students, is the present hedonistic. Really complicated. Look at its complex. They seek novelty. They get bored right away. Okay? So things have to be new, have to be changing, have to be exciting. And also they seek sensation. They want to feel things. They don't want to live in their brain. They live in their heart, in their gut. High energy. Also aggressive, but they're also creative. These are the people who improvise. These are jazz musicians. These are actors. And what are they low on? Ego under control, minus 75. They can't control the ego. Preference for consistency, who cares? Impulse control, now. Conscientiousness, minus. Emotional stability, minus. So they're going to live a good, happy life, and they're going to die young. Okay? Again, all addictions, food addiction, drug addiction, gambling addiction, we're going to say later, video game addiction, online pornography addiction, are all addictions of present hedonism. And we're going to see, sadly, that these are addictions more of men than of women. Sadly for the men here. I do things impulsively, making decisions on the spur of the moment. So that's the mantra of present-oriented people. When you make a decision on the spur of the moment, you're not thinking about the real consequences. You know, spur of the moment means what happens to be around you. What happens to be around you might be friends who say, yeah, let's do it, let's go, let's have fun, let's take a chance. So this is the sex, drugs, rock and roll generation. This was typical in America, but that's the 60s. That's a long time ago. Many of those people are old and they still have that present hedonistic mindset. Now we're going to come to two categories that are for me, very sad. And this, again, remember, this is data of students. It's not data of people who are abnormal in some way. So if you're high on present fatalistic, aggression is 0.5, anxiety 0.5, and depression 0.4. Those of you who are clinical psychologists would immediately say, oh my God, this is a danger alert. Somebody's walking around with high level of aggression, high level of depression, high level of anxiety. In addition, concern for future consequences, minus 70. The strongest element of these people, they don't care about the future. They don't care about the consequences of what they do, which means they're going to do impulsive, foolish things. Ego control low, self-esteem low, conscientiousness low, energy low, emotional stability low, or happy, no. This is a very sad portrait. Equally sad is their twin, past negative. And here is the highest correlation in any psychological study I know between past negative and trait anxiety, 0.75. If I measure your intelligence and measure two weeks later, it's 0.75. Okay. So, and then depression 0.7, aggression 0.6. So this is really danger alert. Self-esteem is low, emotional stability low, impulse all negative. So what does this mean, for example, to Dr. Ali and his students in counseling psychology? The data are ordinary students functioning, going to class, but if I now know somebody is high on present fatalism and past negative, they should be getting remedial counseling before a problem emerges. But we don't have that in psychology. We don't have preventive medicine. We don't have preventive counseling. But I'm saying, based on everything we know from the scale, if I give you this profile, this student is high on past negative and high on present fatalism. They're walking around filled with anxiety, filled with depression, and filled with aggression. This is a danger zone. So instead of waiting until they do something really bad, we should begin to work into our counseling, into our caring, especially in a student center, a way to alert them to have remedial counseling, to say, do you realize here's a profile you have, and so you want to better understand your life, because essentially you're like a loaded gun, and all you need is some provocation to begin to do something bad. Now we know in America, students who are involved, and it's the only place in the world, in high school shootings, high school students come in and shoot up, kill teachers, kill other people. That's the profile of many of these young students. So as I said, so these are, I call at-risk time perspective. Past negative, present fatalism. Okay. So here now is a present hedonistic child walking around selling jellied apples, and here is a present fatalistic mom, knowing that nothing really makes a difference in her life. Nothing she does really makes a difference. Now, what I did not talk about yet is another kind of time perspective which comes from a Zen orientation. You could call it the holistic, expanded present. It's not pleasure, it's not seeking pleasure, it's not seeking sensation. It's being able to be in the moment, to be in the now, really to suspend emotion, suspend sensation. This is why people meditate. This is why special kinds of exercise that get you into the moment. In the Sanskrit it says, yesterday is already a dream, and tomorrow but a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. So if you think about that, that's really a wonderful kind of way to frame your life. But in fact, you can only go into that present zone occasionally, because life goes on around you. You can't meditate your life away unless you want to become a Zen monk, to work with the Dalai Lama. But the point is, you're not going to get a job at this university if you live in the present. So, and Buddha tells us, do not dwell on the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. Now, my daughter, Zara Zimbardo, who's not a psychologist, she's actually a religious studies major, cross-cultural studies, she and I have just developed an expanded time perspective scale, which we are testing, and it looks very promising to add to the other categories. So the idea is, how do you get into the flow of present hedonism? How do you get into enjoy the flow of the moment? So life is temptation. Present focus, future focus, yielding, reflecting, now, later. And so this is what life is all about. And how do we resist temptation? Because temptation is all around us. I did a study following up the research by Walter Mischel at Stanford many years ago, which you bring little children into the laboratory, into the nursery, and you play a game and you give them marshmallows as a treat. If they wait, they can get 2. So if you're a future-oriented child, or if you like 1 marshmallow, it pays to wait to get 2. If you're present-oriented, you cannot resist the temptation. It's a challenge. Come in and have a seat here. Okay. Sit right up. Okay. Now, I'm going to play a game with you, and I would like you to point to which one is the correct answer. Which one is happy most of the time? The shy one or the not shy one? Not shy one, correct. Which one has a brown nose? The shy puppet or the not shy puppet?
The not shy puppet.
Point there. Thank you. I'm sorry. Stop that. Which one is happy most of the time? The shy one or the not shy one?
Probably that one.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I want to give you a prize for having done so well. Do you like marshmallows? You do? Well, here's a marshmallow for you. You can eat it now, but if you wait until I come back, you can have 2 of them. So you can eat this now, but I'm going to go outside for a minute. When I come back, you can have 2 marshmallows if you wait.
Okay, I'll wait.
Do you think you could wait? Okay, we'll see. I'll be back in a minute. See? Hello.
You're back.
You waited. You waited for me. Okay, so now you know what's going to happen.
I didn't know that.
You're going to get a double treat. I'm going to give you 2 of these lovely marshmallows. You want to eat them now or save them for later?
I'm going to eat them now.
Okay, well, go ahead. A little sticky.
I've had marshmallows before.
Right, you got it right. So I'm going to give you a prize. I'm going to give you a treat. And the treat is a delicious marshmallow. But if you wait, I have to go check my car. When I come back, if you wait, you can have 2 of them. You can have 1 now, or when I come back, you can have 2. Okay? Okay. Hello, my dear. You ate the marshmallow. Was it delicious?
Yes.
Do you like marshmallows? You don't like marshmallows? Do you like chocolate? Okay, well, the treat you have won is a chocolate. But, if you wait till I come back, you could get 2. You could eat this now. I have to go check my car. And when I come back, if you wait, I'll give you 2 of them.
Okay.
So you can eat it now, but if you wait till I come back, you have 2. Okay? You think you could wait? Okay. So I will be back in a few minutes. So you could eat it now, but if you wait, you're going to have 2 of them. Okay, I'll be back soon. Hello, I'm back. How are you?
Good. I waited.
No, you ate it. You ate the chocolate. He said, I didn't leave the room. I waited. Give me my 2 chocolate. So he could be a good used car salesman, maybe. But he's going to always be in trouble. Now the question is, what difference does it make whether you eat a marshmallow or you don't? Okay? I'm going to say this is one of the most impressive demonstrations. It's something you should do with if you have younger siblings, do the marshmallow game. And here's the reason why it makes a difference. Walter Mischel, he was my colleague at Stanford, went back 10 years later when these children were graduating high school, going to college, and he gave them many tests, and then he's been following them up for 40 years, now giving neurological examinations. And it turns out the decision you make at 4 to 5 years old influences everything in your life. It influences because most of the children who delayed became future-oriented. Most of the children who couldn't delay, who couldn't resist temptation, remained stuck in the present. So this is a funny cartoon I made. You may already be familiar with the famous marshmallow study conducted by my colleague, psychologist Walter Mischel, in which a group of 4-year-olds were given 1 marshmallow and told they were allowed to eat it immediately. They were told that if they could wait to eat the marshmallow after being left alone with it for a while, then they would be given an extra marshmallow to eat. Most eat the marshmallow as soon as they are left alone with it, but some other children are able to resist temptation. Those children who ate the marshmallow right away are considered to be oriented toward the present, while those who resisted temptation have an orientation toward the future. When the children were interviewed years later as 18-year-olds, there were amazing differences between the children who were able to delay gratification and those children who couldn't resist the immediate temptation.
scored 250 points higher on the SAT, overreacts to frustration, works well under pressure, indecisive, self-reliant and confident, prone to jealousy and envy. The Marshmallow Experiment is a classic study of how a person's ability to delay gratification, even at the age of 4, can predict many significant future outcomes. But what does this have to do with you? A lot. In my new book, The Time Paradox, you will learn how your own relationship to time plays a significant role in your personal happiness. Whether you're looking for a better understanding of the world at large, from religion to politics to business to national destinies, or want a deeper understanding of yourself, The Time Paradox teaches you how to recognize your own attitudes toward time and how your everyday decisions are influenced by your personal time orientation. And it will help you overcome the hidden mental biases that keep you too attached to the past, unhealthily obsessed with future goals, or too focused on immediate gratification. You can improve your personal success, happiness, and psychological health. The Time Paradox will show you how. It's only a matter of time, making time work for you.
So interestingly, Walter Mischel just published this year his book, The Marshmallow Test. It's a very successful book. He's doing media around. So as I said, he's been following up these little children for more than 40 years. Many of the children who resist temptation have successful marriages. Many of the children who could not resist temptation either never got married or marriage ended in separation or divorce. So it's truly amazing that simple decision, seem like it's irrelevant whether you eat a marshmallow or not, influences so much in your life. But I'm saying the moderating variable is time perspective. Because what he's saying, what it measures is self-control. And self-control is central to controlling your destiny. So, there's another animation. I gave a talk like this in England a few years ago. And they took the audio for 10 minutes. And they gave it to 3 artists. Are any of you artists? Any of you do design, computer design, 1, 2, 3? So, look at this. They gave my talk to 3 artists, just a voice. And what they did is they made cartoons about everything I was saying as I was saying it. And then they put it all together, and they have one artist's hand making an image of everything I say. And it's so creative. I mean, I think art schools, design schools everywhere should take lessons from this as a way to teach students how to do design effectively, but also, in the end, how to make money. RSA is Royal Society of Arts in London, and this is their animation.
So what we have discovered in 30 years of research, there's 6 main time zones that people live in. 2 focus on the past, 2 on the present, and 2 on the future. The people who focus on the past either remember all the good old times, successes, happy birthdays, nostalgia. These are the people who keep the family record, the family books, who have the family rituals. There are other people who focus only on regret, only on failure, only on all the things that went wrong. So we call those focus past positive or past negative. There are 2 ways to be present-oriented. The most obvious is to be hedonistic, that you live for pleasure and you avoid pain. You seek novelty, you seek sensation. There are other people who are present-oriented because they say, it doesn't pay to plan. My life is fated. Fated by my religion, fated by my poverty, fated by the conditions that I'm living under. Most of us are here because we are future-oriented, that we have learned to work rather than play, to resist temptation. But there's another way to be future-oriented. Depending on your religion, life begins after the death of the mortal body. To be future-oriented, you have to trust that when you make a decision about the future, it's going to carry out. If you have great inflation, you don't put money in the bank because you can't trust the future. If there's instability in your family, adults can't keep their promises to you. The closer you are to the equator, the more present-oriented you are. The more you're in an environment where climate doesn't change, it gives you a set of imagining sameness rather than change. Protestants everywhere have higher gross national product than Catholic countries, in part because of the Protestant ethic, because of the notion that you work hard to succeed, to demonstrate that you are God's chosen people. My family comes from Sicily, and in Italy there is a political movement called La Liga to cut Italy in half, to have North Italy and South Italy, cut it just below Tuscany. The people in the North say, we do all the work. The people in the South are lazy. They're like children. They want to have babies, have 3-hour dinners, etc. People in the South say, they're not Italian, they're German and Austrian. You know, they eat yogurt instead of pasta. They take their lunch in a paper bag. And in the recent election, the Liga got 14% of the national vote. It turns out it is accurate. We've done research to say people in the North tend to be, on a scale much more future-oriented. People in the South tend to be more past-oriented or present hedonistic. And so my family is Sicilian, and I come from Sicily. I go back every year. I start an educational foundation. We send high school kids to college and set up computer labs. And I'm talking about some of this stuff, and a man comes up and says, I'm a poet. I live with words. And it wasn't until I heard you talk that I realized there's no future tense verb in Sicilian dialect. I said, what do you mean? There was, is, there's no will be. He said, that's why nothing gets done. And I didn't realize it because we never planned. So again, here's how when you have a number of people who share a certain time perspective, then it does come to characterize a nation. In the same way, if you have a Catholic nation where people tend to be present or past-oriented, rather than a Protestant nation where in general people tend to be more future-oriented, it affects you in very profound ways. So there's a wonderful book called The Geography of Time, and it's written by a dear friend of mine, Robert Levine, who's a social psychologist, and he actually literally went around the world doing wonderful experiments. He looks at what he calls the pace of life. See, time perspective is how people divide their own experience into partitions, time zones. Another kind of time orientation is your sense of duration. How much time has expired while you're sitting in a dentist's office before they start drilling? How much time has expired when you've been waiting in line? How much time has expired when you're having fun or at sex? So time duration is totally a function of whether you're bored, whether you're excited or not. And what he does is he shows that in different cultures, people have a different pace of life. And you do this very simply. You sit in a cafe and you mark off 100 meters, and as people pass, you start a stopwatch. And you see how fast people walk. You go to a post office, and on a piece of paper you say, I'd like, 3 pounds of this postage or 10 euros, and you see how long it takes. So he has a bunch of these measures, and it turns out you can identify cultures as different pace of life, and now cities. And he shows in America, you can rank 60 cities according high pace of life and low pace of life. And the ones that have the highest pace of life, men have the most coronary problems. That is, this becomes part of your whole way of life. We all begin life as present hedonists. All of us. I mean, at the breast, at the bottle, we want pleasure, we want to avoid pain. And one of the things that families do, and especially school, my sense is the purpose of schooling is to take present-oriented little beasts and make them more future-oriented. In some cultures, make them more past-oriented. In America, a child drops out of school every 9 seconds. This is worse for kids from a minority background, and it's worse for boys than girls. There's actually a disaster recipe developing among boys in America, literally dropping out of high school, college, and it's not simply poor performance. One of the problems is, a recent study shows that by the time a boy is 21, he has spent at least 10,000 hours playing video games alone. Probably more watching pornography alone. And you put that together, it means, A, they haven't learned social skills, emotional, social intelligence, but also it means that they live in a world that they create. They're playing Warcraft, they're playing these other games, which is exciting. In fact, I just heard the other day that these game companies are now going to develop 3D games so that the world will be all around you. Their brains are being digitally rewired. which means they will never fit in a traditional classroom, which is analog. Somebody talks at you without even the nice pictures. Meaning it's boring. I mean, you control nothing. You sit there passively. And if you want to change the curriculum, I understand the traditionalists here say we got to go back to reading, writing, arithmetic. Disaster. These kids will never fit into that. They have to be in a situation where they are controlling something, and school is set up, you control nothing. You're passive. School is all about learning, delay of gratification, literally endlessly. All addictions are addictions of present hedonism. Food, sex, drugs, gambling, etc. All of our propaganda, all of our educational message, all our public relations messages are designed for future-oriented kids, who's not the problem. They tell you, here's the negative consequences of doing what you're doing. Future-oriented kids know that, and they don't do it. Present-oriented kids know the future consequences. If you're a teenage girl, you know that if you have unprotected sex, you're likely to get pregnant or have sexually transmitted disease. You know it, but that knowledge never feeds back to change your behavior. So that's the interesting thing about time perspective. I think we are underestimating the power of technology in rewiring young people's brains. Kids don't wear wristwatches. They say it's a single-function device. You don't waste time with a single-function device. And they live in a digital thing. What matters is the second. You know, I didn't mention, one of the things that gets people upset in America is how long it takes to boot up your computer and how long it takes to download something. Less than a minute. That makes people angry. So it becomes an emotional thing. You get angry waiting in line, waiting for services. Waiting is a waste of time, even if it's waiting for your computer to boot up. So I think there's a fundamental change going on in our culture that I think we adults are not realizing, that kids are totally different than we were. And it's because it's revolution in time. There was a recent study we did with USA Today, asking Americans how busy they are. The vast majority of Americans, more than 50%, said, I'm busier now than I was last year, I'm busier last year than the previous year, and I sacrifice friends, family, and sleep for my success. This is across the board, not separating by future orientation. And then we say, suppose you had an 8-day a week, what would you do? They say, oh, that would be great. They would spend most of that time working harder, achieving more, not with friends, not with family, and not even sleeping. They did this study 20 years ago, and I was upset, again, from this Italian background. Only 60% of Americans said they have regular sit-down family dinners. When we redid the study last year, only 1 in 5 American families have sit-down dinners together. In America, we talk about family values. You can't have a family value if you never have family meals together. I think many of life's puzzles can be solved by simply understanding our own time perspective and that of others. Lots of conflict we have with people is really a conflict in different time perspectives. Once you're aware of that, you stop making negative attributions like you're dumb or you're childish or you're pig-headed or you're authoritarian. It's really the most simple idea in the world.
Thank you. So one of the exercises... One of the exercises I do with my students after they take the time perspective scale is we identify extremes. We have each student who is extremely future-oriented has to spend one day, one Saturday, with somebody who's extremely present-oriented and so forth. And for many of them, they say they cannot believe. Each one says they can't believe how this other person lives. They all live on the Stanford campus. They live in dormitories, and they each write a paper about themselves and the other person. So again, it'd be a wonderful exercise for you to think about doing here. So I'm going to very quickly talk about some research to show that it's not just correlations, it's not just one scale, another scale, but it influences behavior. And then we'll quickly go to the newest thing we're doing, is to show that these simple ideas can influence psychological treatment, therapy, for people who have post-traumatic stress disorder. And then we'll end with questions, and those of you who didn't do selfies can come up. There's scales of mindfulness. There's scales of mindfulness. Time perspective predicts mindfulness. Those who are present fatalistic and present hedonistic are less mindful than those in other scales. There's new measures called people who are larks versus owls. people who wake up early, who are early birds versus late birds, and it turns out present hedonistic time perspective are more likely to be night people, future-oriented people are more likely to be day people. There's scales of emotional intelligence. If you have a balanced time perspective, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, meaning high on present, past positive, moderately high on future, and moderate on present hedonism, it's related to having high emotional intelligence. We gave our scale, as I said, in 36 countries around the world, and it turns out, and we won't go through all the details here, it predicts to uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, whether you have a lifestyle of indulgence or restraint, and also by nation of human development indexes. And we now can look at nations around the world and whether or not they have a balanced time perspective by nation, or whether they're much more negative. So curiously, Estonia, Israel, Poland, Russia, Portugal, Italy, United Kingdom, as it goes around, have a more balanced time perspective. And curiously for me, America has a low balanced time perspective and fairly high on negative. And so again, yeah, Egypt is not here. So we got to add you to our group. And again, we can look at time perspective profiles across nations. So what's exciting to me is his research I started trying to understand myself, how I differ from my father. So it's autobiographical. Then trying to understand my students at Stanford. And now with the help of young colleagues, these are young researchers from many different nations that I work with regularly. We go to international conferences, but we do Skype once a month. We now export these ideas around the world. So he is part of our team, plus 50 more from Sweden, from South Africa, from Russia, from New Zealand, from France, from Turkey. Now, recently on my 80th birthday, 2 years ago, all of these researchers got together and gave, in my honor, a new book summarizing all the available research on time perspective. 103 authors from 27 nations, 6 continents, and 32 chapters. It's the best birthday present I ever got. So again, even things like who supports environmental sustainability? Only people are future-oriented. In fact, this is a problem. I mentioned yesterday in my talk, one of the biggest dangers now is climate change disasters happening in every culture, in every nation, and our governments are doing nothing about it. And the only people who are leading protests are students and young people who are future-oriented, but they have to convince the rest of the population to join them. Research shows that the only women who go to mammography clinics in Italy and other nations are future-oriented women. So present-oriented women don't get health checkups when it's available for free. When we look at alcohol consumption and distress, again, it's past negative. Now, so for all these measures now, we develop scales by nations, and we can look at positive relations by each nation and negative relations. Who does risk driving, risky taking, substance abuse, number of sexual relations, partners, and so forth. Now, here's a cute little study I did at Stanford. So we can look at little things and big things. So Stanford students are very smart. Now we're going to ask you to solve a problem. Half of the students are going to be present-oriented, half of them are going to be more future-oriented. We half male, half female. And we're going to give them mazes to solve. We're going to tell them we want to see how fast you can solve this maze. Mazes like this or mazes like this. We start a time. And what's interesting is, when we start the time, we say begin. If you're future-oriented, what do? You look. You look, you say, here's the goal. I want to get here, and I'm going to start here. So how do you go from here to here? If you're present-oriented, you start with your pen. You go here. Da 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 da. I almost got it. Da 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 da. I'm back now. So if you're future-oriented, you look. You plan. You understand. You look at the goal.